All right, this is our final video for chapter 8.1 on one-step algebraic equations using rational numbers in both fraction and decimal form. Starting at question 10, we have one of those newfangled equations where the variable is in our denominator. And we've learned now, of course, whatever you do to one side, if you do the same thing to the other side, you maintain equality. So multiplying this side by a and multiplying this side by a, whatever number that is, should maintain equality. But since those are opposite operations, you end up with 1.1 on this side. And negative 5.5 times a is negative 5.5a. Second step is to divide both sides by the coefficient to isolate the variable. And a will equal 1.1 divided by 5.5 equals 0.2. So negative 0.2 is your solution. Same thing with the next question. Our variables in the denominator. First step is to multiply both sides by m. 4.8 equals 6.4m. Divide by the coefficient. And m will equal the quotient of 4.8 divided by 6.4 equals 0.75. Skip 11. On to the story problem. The average speed of a vehicle S is represented by the formula S equals d divided by t, where d is the distance driven and t is the time. If Pablo drove an average of speed of 85 kilometers an hour for 3.7 hours, what distance did he drive? And then B, if Sheila drove 152 kilometers at an average speed of 95 kilometers an hour, how much time did her trip take? Okay, I'm going to press pause. You go ahead and try this. You press pause too, and then press unpause to see the solution. All right, here we go. Here's your solution. So for the first question, the speed is 85 kilometers an hour. So I'm going to substitute, oh, that's not a marker. That is a highlighter. I'm going to sub 82 for where my S is. My distance I don't know, so I'm going to leave it as the variable d. And my time I know to be 3.75. Once I've substituted them in, I'm going to isolate using my algebraic sense. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 3.75. And I will isolate d to be the product of, oh, that's not the one I want, 85 and 3.75, which means that is my solution for D. Now, the last thing you need to do for a story problem is make sure you write a sentence. So therefore, do you know what units those are? Well, it's distance, and distance has been defined. Oh, it doesn't even define it, does it for you? Well, we assume it's meters. Therefore, the distance, oh, no, it's kilometers, isn't it? The distance is 318.75 kilometers traveled. Right? The distance traveled would be 318.75 kilometers. In the second question, we're going to do the same thing we did in the first. We're going to start with our formula. And we're going to read the question. If Sheila drove 152 kilometers, so that's going to be what variable? If she drove 152. What's 152 going to be for a variable? Torresi. What is the variable for 152 kilometers? Is that our S or D or a T? It is. So I'm going to substitute that for my distance. And the speed is 95. So that's going to be my speed over here of 95. And I do not know how much time. So I do not know my variable t. So in order to isolate it, I'm going to multiply both sides by t. I get 152 equals. Now remember, when you multiply a variable by a number, keep your number as the coefficient. So we're going to have 95t. Divide both sides by the coefficient of 95. And your t will be equal to 152 divided by 95 equals 1.6. So therefore, your sentence will be your time. It's going to be in hours. Therefore, it will take 1.6 hours. Now, if you're smart, you will know that 0.1 hours is equal to 6 minutes. Oh, no, not 0.6 minutes. 0.1 hours is 6 minutes because there are 60 minutes in an hour, and a tenth of 60 is 6. So therefore, that 0.6 hours will actually be equal to 36 minutes. So if you want to prove to yourself that you're a genius, you could actually say 1 hour and 36 minutes. Perfect. Okay, our next story problem, press pause, try it out, see what you got. It says a roll of nickels is worth $2. Write and solve an equation to determine the number of nickels in a roll. So the first thing you have to do is you have to define your variable. We're going to make x, or if you want, sometimes story problems make more appropriate variables. You can use the word n if you'd like, or the variable n, for the number of nickels. All right, we're going to use n as the number of nickels. If you had 2 nickels, how much money would you have? The core of the earth here is what you'd have. Density. One big, massive, dense of nickel. If you had 2 nickels, anybody, just shout out the answer. It's okay. Avery, if you had 2 nickels, how much money would you have? Excellent. Such a bright girl. So what you actually did is you multiplied the number of nickels, which was 2, by a nickel. And we're going to use a decimal coefficient. Some of y'all might have used 5n, right? We don't want you using whole numbers because the purpose of this is to realize that a nickel is 5 cents. And the value of that is $2. So if you want to put 2, or if you really want to get fancy and put 2.00, you could. But that is the equation you would use to solve how many nickels are in a roll of nickels. 5 cents multiplied by the number of nickels equals $2. Divide both sides by the coefficient. And n will equal, well, I know how many nickels are in a quarter or a roll, but 2 divided by 0.05 equals 40. And the last thing you need to do is go, therefore, there is 40 nicks in a roll. Bruh. And that would be the correct. So step 1, define your variable. Step 2, create an equation. Step 3, solve your equation. Step 4, write a sentence. And use vernacular that the youth of this generation will understand. Question 14, give her a go. Okie dokie, so we have a square, and I'll just draw it, because every time I have something I can actually draw, I draw it, and its side length is s. And the perimeter of said square is 25.8 centimeters. Well, I know the formula for the perimeter of a square is taking the side length and multiplying it by 4, and that would give us the perimeter of a square. So therefore, since I don't know it, 4 multiplied by the side length equals the perimeter, which is 25.8. And now I have this beautiful, easy to figure out formula that I could solve by simply dividing both sides by 4 to determine that the side length of said square is the perimeter divided by the 4 sides to tell me the side length is actually 6.45 centimeters. So therefore, the side length is 6.45 centimeters, comma, bruh. What's the female equivalent of bruh? There's none. So females are bruh, guys are bruh. I think right now we should invent a word. Anyone want to have a female equivalent of bruh? Because bruh is brother, right? Am I wrong? So can we go suh? Can we use suh? Say it again. Gra? Gra, like girl? I kind of like it. Slash gra. Yeah, you know what? We can make that work. Let's go with it. Gra. Try question 15. Actually, let's do it together. We'll just do it. I'll do it without you guys. Without solving the equation, negative 5 over d equals negative 1.3. Predict whether d is greater or less than 0. Well, the first thing I would do is I'd write it like this. Okay? I would rewrite this with my negative sign either in my numerator or my denominator. And if we think about this, if D was negative, if D was negative, what kind of answer would this side be? If D was negative, would it be positive or negative on that side? It would be positive, because we know a negative divided by a negative is a positive. But what we see here is that that side is actually negative, right here. So what does that tell us about our D value? It has to be positive, correct? So therefore, D must be positive. All right, D must be positive. Because if it was 0, let's just see what the calculator tells us if we try and get it to do negative 5 divided by 0. If it was exactly 0, it informs us that dividing something into 0 groups does not work. Because you can't concretely take something and divide it into nothing. It defies the law of physics. So therefore, D has to be positive. Question 16 says the diameter, D, of a circle is related to the circumference, C, by the formula C equals D, C over D equals, equals pi. Right? Calculate the diameter of a circle with your circumference of 54.5 centimeters. Express your answer to the nearest tenth of a centimeter. Go ahead and try that. Never mind, we didn't do this one either. Let's do 17 right now. Let's do 17. 17 is a dandy. 17 is that. So a polygon poly means more than one, right? When we did polynomials, more than one. And gon means not here anymore. Actually, it means shape. So polygon simply means a side with more than one side. So actually, it's more than 3 or more sides. So a regular polygon could be a triangle, it could be a rectangle, it could be a 5-sided figure, it could be a 6-sided figure. I don't know. But all of them have to be the same length, actually. That's what I forgot to tell you. Oh, I made this mistake on the elephant. I'll erase the elephant. One thing is true, is that all of the sides in a polygon are going to have the same length. Okay? Identify the polygon. Go ahead and try that. We do not know S. We do not know the number of sides. Our polygon has sides. We don't know if it's 3-sided, 4-sided, 5-sided, 6-sided. We do know that each of the sides is 5.68. So if I take the number of sides and multiply it by 5.68, if it's a 3-sided figure, it'll tell me the perimeter of the triangle. If it's a 4-sided figure, it will tell me the side length of the square, etc., etc. But I do know the perimeter is 34.08 centimeters. So I know the side length, I know the perimeter, I just don't know how many sides there are. So by using this, I can divide both sides by the side length, and I can determine that if each side length is 5.68, then there must be 6 sides to this figure. Does anyone know what a 6-sided figure is called? Don't say octagon. Correct. Hexagon is correct. Le hexagon. If I say it enough, everyone's going to start using it. Question 18. One year, student council sold 856 copies of a school yearbook. 4/5 of those students at the school bought a copy. How many students did not buy a yearbook? This is an interesting question because we're going to make X to equal the total population of the school. X is going to equal the total population. Start with that and see if you can come up with a formula, and then eventually determine how many students did not buy a yearbook. Here we go. So if 4/5 of the students at the school bought a yearbook, then 4/5 of all of the students bought a yearbook, and that is the number 856. Now, if you are intelligent, You will never use fractions if you can use simple decimals. What would this question look like as a decimal instead of a fraction? Anybody? Does anyone know what 4/5 is as a decimal, or is it just me? That's right. It is 8/10. Sorry, 8. So, if you are intelligent, you will not do this question. You will opt for the decimal coefficient as opposed to the fractional coefficient. But since it's Monday morning, and most of you are still currently asleep in your bed, I will do it both ways to show you that it works. So since this is 4/5 of x, or multiplied by x, I'm going to divide by 4/5. And I'm going to divide by 4/5. Whole number can be thought of as a fraction over 1, multiplied by the reciprocal. 856 times 5, 856 times 5 equals 4,280. 1 times 4 is 4. Take that 4,280 and divide it by 4, and you get 1,070 equals x. You could have done it that way. Bizarro, but you could have. Or you could have simply said, I like 4/5 as a decimal better. I'm going to divide both sides by the coefficient of 0.8. And when you do so, watch this, people. It'll blow your mind. You get the same answer. So it's up to you which pathway you chose. Did anyone use decimal coefficients? Was there anyone in this class? Good. There are some intelligent people. Excellent. If you use 4/5, just realize that fractions and decimals are the same thing. But we're not done yet. Because what did we solve? We now know what the total population is. X is the total population. But that's not the question. The question is, how many students did not buy a yearbook? Well, let's just do some simple subtraction. If 1,070 people are at the school and 856 bought a yearbook, that means if I subtract those, that means that 214 students did not buy a yearbook, and therefore 214 students didn't buy a yearbook. Bruh. And our last question, a score of 17 on the math test results in a mark out of 68%, or of 68%. What score would give a mark out of 100? So what we want to do first is x is going to equal, let's just help you out here. What is our variable going to be? Does anyone know what x is going to represent? Yep. How many questions on the test? Total number of questions. That's our first, most important part of that is defining the variable. That's how we're going to start. Once I've given you that, it should be easy for the rest. Go ahead and try that. Some days I just don't like being a math teacher, but that's okay. They're lovely people in other ways. So we have x equals the total number of questions, but you got 17 of them. So you got 17 out of the total number of questions on the test. And you're like, I got 68%. Now be careful. Be careful. Because 68% is 68 over 100, which is 0.68, which is 0.68. Most of you probably got that wrong. Most of you probably wrote 68 there instead of 0.68. But you do have to remember that 68% is less than 1, right? It's a percentage. When you studied fractions, decimals, and percents back in grade 6, you remember talking about 68 over 100 is 68%, which is 0.68. Now that you have that, we can use our newfound ninja skills of algebra. Take this, then divide both sides by the coefficient, and x will equal 17 divided by 68%, 25. So therefore, there were 25 questions on the test. Perfect.